Oh yeah. Bet you guys never saw this one coming. You have to be a bit of a liar to tell a story the right way. It's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head. Always. All the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story. We understand how dangerous a mask can be, that we all become what we pretend to be. But the best lies about me are the ones I told. Words are pale shadows of forgotten names. As names have power, words have power. Words can light fires in the minds of men, and words can wring tears from the hardest hearts. Using words to talk of words is like using a pencil to draw a picture of itself. On itself, it's impossible, confusing, frustrating, but there are other ways to understand it. There are three things all wise men fear: the sea and storm, a night with no moon, and the anger of a gentle man. Only priests and fools are fearless, and I've never been on the best of terms with God. There are times when the mind is dealt such a blow that it hides itself in insanity. While this may not seem beneficial, it is. There are times when reality is nothing but pain, and to escape that pain, the mind must leave reality behind. Bones mend, but regret stays with you forever. When we are children, we seldom think of the future. This innocence leaves us free to enjoy ourselves as few adults can. The day we fret about the future is the day we leave our childhood behind. But it gets tiresome being spoken to as if you are a child, even if you happen to be one. There are 7 words that will make a person love you. There are 10 words that will break a strong man's will. But a word is nothing but a painting of a fire. And a name? A name is the fire itself. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today to talk about a book I don't think very many of you ever expect to see me review on the channel, guys. I'm talking about 2007's The Name of the Wind by Mr. Patrick Rothfuss, book number 1 in the Kingkiller Chronicle. Now, the reason I say that, guys, is because I think it's become well known that I wasn't too hot on this book, but guys, I'm going to give it the fair standard Mike's Book Reviews review today because I think that it does deserve it. And you guys that place all these labels on me about what I do and do not like about this book, you can have a definitive answer about what does and does not work for me. I don't feel like I need to tell you guys too much about this book. It is very, very popular. But just in case, I think I will let you know it won the Quill Award and it won the Best Book of the Year by Publishers Weekly back in 2007. It sold over 1 million copies. It's been translated into 30 different languages, and it is often cited as the best fantasy book of this century. So by now, if you haven't at least heard of Name of the Wind, I have no idea what brought you to this video, but I'm glad that you guys are here. So this is something that I wanted to do, not necessarily to, one-up anybody or anything like that, guys. I have a lot of things I did like about this book, and I'm going to talk about those today, but there are some things that just didn't work for me, and I'd like to explain why if you are willing to listen. But before we do that, guys, let's do, like always, let's talk about what is The Name of the Wind about. Now, I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my life and my sanity. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during the day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that have made minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. I am both the arcane, and this is my story, guys. 2007 here. This is The Name of the Wind. Now we got to get into, guys, what makes this book good or bad. I want to start with the good because I don't want people thinking that I think this book is just straight garbage. Absolutely not. If you go back and you watch that now famous video of my unpopular opinion on this book, you hear that I say, I just think maybe it's just kind of exaggerated how damn great this book is. So there are plenty of things that I liked, and let's get into those now. The good, obviously, I mean, this one's a layup. Rothfuss, his writing style, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It is as advertised. It is absolutely stunning to read. And I'm not even a prose snob, but I think I have a good enough eye to take a look and be like, yeah, That's a beautiful string of words that author just put together. I think that this is probably right there with Robin Hobb and George R. R. Martin is like the most beautiful prose that I personally have read. It's really damn good. I have zero criticisms of his writing style. Some people kind of find purple a little pretentious and things like that. No, not at all. I think the way that he writes a sentence is just second to none. He's great. Chris Verrocchio is probably the closest comparison that I have found to him. But I don't think that there's anything out there that's kind of close to this in fantasy, at least not that I've read. So I would say definitely. That's one of those, I think, everyone, why do you love this book? They're going to say, oh, the writing is just beautiful. That's true. There's no getting around that. That's absolutely stunning. It's beautifully written. It's detailed. It's damn near poetic. So I nothing but props for him in that regard. When people say things like, oh, I could just read Patrick Rothfuss describing the grass growing, that is absolutely apt here. That does fit, and it's not hyperbole. It's very, very good. I'll never get enough of a character telling their life story. That's something I love, especially in movies. I love it when you go through the life of somebody, the Forrest Gump, Blow, things like that. I love that, going through the years of someone's life. That's something that Stephen King does really, really well. I love slice of life, and I love coming of age if it is written very, very well. Kind of hit or miss on some of those things, but there's a lot of stuff in here I do like, and I love someone narrating their life story. That's something I've loved ever since back David Copperfield. I have always loved that format. Now, Rothfuss does seem to get credit for that, so now that any other author who has their character telling their life story, oh, well, they just ripped off Name of the Wind, I'm like, Patrick Rothfuss wasn't the first to do it, but it is a storytelling narrative that I am a big, big fan of. I just cannot get enough. The world and the characters, I think they're fleshed out really, really well. I mean, really well. Now, the problem is I think I like Bast and Denna a lot more than I like both. But I think the multiple side characters are kind of what make the time at the university special. I think that's the stuff that I really do like, and almost in like that Harry Potter kind of way, and that all those side characters you saw all through the years, they kind of become like making it feel like a living, breathing world. I feel like he does that very, very well. Some people will be like, oh, there's just too many characters once you get to the university. I don't think so, because, it's a university. You're going to get more than just both in his little circle there. You're going to get to know a lot more of these people, the good and the bad. And I think that that's really, really done well. It is really, really done well, and it makes me really get into this world and where okay, I can see that this is so much stuff, and it just feels lived in. I love that the world feels lived in. It's got a great description of the government, the currency, nobility, language, the myths and lore. It's all there. So it does feel like its own great big thing. It feels very original, very fresh. I know a lot of people have said they feel like it's derivative of other things. I didn't get that a ton, at least not when I read it. So who knows? I might be looking for those things a little more now. But at the time I said, okay, I have zero complaints really on all that stuff. I like that Rothfuss isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. I know that some people have said this is, I don't know, it's kind of PG-13ish. I feel like there are parts that are pretty dark and pretty grim. It's obviously not anything that's going to be, hey, shield the children's eyes, while you read it. But it's got a lot of adult themes that I think will go over, with that audience quite well, if that's kind of what you're looking for. He doesn't, fade to black when bad things are happening, and I can appreciate that. I think the magic, guys, the magic is very well done. Very well done. Both the arcane and the fey magic. Now, guys, I haven't read book 2, so this is probably going to sound dated or ignorant. If I recall correctly, they talk about there's like 8 or 9 kinds of magic, maybe 10, and I think we only see like 5 or 6 in this book. So I don't know what all the magic was, but I just remember that I was really, really liking the magic system. I was in a world where it seems like it was Brandon Sanderson and maybe Brent Weeks and Lightbringer that had really good magic systems. Everybody else's just kind of seemed like a rehash of something that had already been done. I felt like this was pretty fresh. I liked it. So I had no real criticisms there. I just think it's a really good book, guys. I think if you are making the transition from young adult fantasy to adult fantasy, this is a really great starter book. I really do. And I think that it is very, very accessible for those people. Yes, his prose is very, very majestic, but it's never going to feel like a point where you're like, this is, I gotta look up a word every 10 words and try to understand what it means. I don't mean like that. I just mean it's beautifully written, and like you will just read something and be like, wow, that's really pretty, So it's accessible, I think, for even a junior high reading level. But again, it is very well written, and it's a very good book, I think, to start your adult fantasy journey. Now, here's the part, guys. What did I not really like about this? Well, the first and foremost, the thing I didn't like about this book, both. I did not like this character, like at all. Look, every time I start talking about what I don't like about both, I'm always going to have someone that drops in my comments and thinks they have to describe to me what an unreliable narrator is. I understand the unreliable narrator, that format. I get it. I know how it works, guys. I was reading Anne Rice a long time ago, and I learned all about unreliable narrator. I understand how it works. Doesn't make me like Voth anymore. I think he comes across as egotistical. He's always the smartest man in the room. Every woman wants him, and I just find him obnoxious and totally unlikable. I never really connect with this. When that's your main character, it's hard for me. There's very few authors that can write their main character as unlikable, and I'm still all in on the journey. And I hate to use the word Mary Sue, Gary Sue, all that stuff, but I will just say that I feel like Voth never does anything wrong. Now, I know it's him telling this story. You know, I talk about the parts where you fuck up as a character. I get that. But it's just, he's the best. He's the best. You know, he's always the best. And it just gets frustrating and annoying to me at times. And I know all the time in this book, he's like talking about, hey, you know, the story's only great, you know, if you lie, I told all those lies, you know, about myself. Those are the only lies about me, the ones that I've told and stuff. I get how a bard works, you know. So again, I get that storytelling format. It's not a problem with me, you know, struggling to grasp the format here. It's just it makes the character completely unlikable for me because I think he's a bullshit artist. And I'm not buying anything that he's selling. The romance is one of the worst I've ever read in fantasy. It is so bad. I know he was trying to do this like will they, won't they thing within it, and I just never cared. So while the world is great, and I find the side characters okay, I find this core story to be incredibly dull. So when someone says, hey, I could listen to Patrick Rothfuss describe grass growing, well, you're in luck, because that's what most of this book is. It is very slow. It is very plodding. I feel like the book is very bloated. Is it beautiful? Sure. But it's just like I said with Robin Hobb recently, guys. You can have the most beautiful prose in the world. You can be describing that landscape to a T. After a couple hundred pages, I need something to happen. And I don't feel like it does in this book. Very slow. And it goes to show that if I don't like your characters, I don't care how good your writing is. I don't care how great your world is. I don't care how good your magic system is. I have to have someone that I'm kind of rooting for in your books. And I don't really have it in this. In fact, I'm almost at the point where Voth is such a jerk that I kind of want to hear him fail, you know, but I know he's telling the story and I know he's alive, obviously, so I know that did not happen. But yeah, it drives me crazy. I just do not like very many of the characters here. Now, like I said, I did like Bast and I did like Denna, but outside of that, I like some of those side characters at the school and stuff, but I can't even remember any of their names because no one really left a huge lasting impression, but I did appreciate that they were there. But with Voth, man, it just feels like this whole book, it feels like complaining about your student loans, but in a fantasy setting. It's like this was Patrick Rothfuss Dungeons and Dragons character, and it was like a maxed out bard. You know, that's what it feels like. This is. He's just writing what his Dungeons and Dragons character would be saying in this situation. So it's again, I don't really have a ton else except just look, guys, the story just didn't click for me. I need to have somewhat of a story. If I'm not going to be crazy about your characters, I need the story to be really good. So again, you can have the best world, you can have the best lore, you can have the best magic system. If I'm not invested in those characters, man, I need at least the story to be good. And I never felt like it was. I felt like this book is incredibly bloated. It can sometimes be pretentious, and it is painfully slow. Like Robin Hobb books are a mile a minute by comparison to this book for me. But I also think if you're one of those who loves how slow Robin Hobb books are, I think this might be your jam. You know, it might be your jam. But I'll never understand the legacy this book has as Tolkien-esque. That drives me crazy, guys. I don't see any Tolkien in this at all. And I think that's just because everyone's always just going to latch on to Lord of the Rings as, you know, the greatest story ever told in a fantasy setting. And I feel like this generation needed their own. They needed their own, and I feel like that's what happened here. But guys, I know this is a very unpopular opinion. I've talked about this before. There are very few of us who don't think this book is amazing. So I get that, and I can relate and say that might be a me problem. But guys, what else is bad about this? Well, it's not really necessarily about this book, but if you do love it, you're in trouble because, hey, in case you didn't know, the series isn't finished yet. So if I didn't bring that up, I feel like, you know, whatever. So I feel like maybe you might be left with blue balls on some of these mysteries. But I don't know. I didn't read book 2. Like I said, some of these questions that are left lingering here might be answered. But it's going to leave you quite hanging here, I think. But at least you do have book number 2 if you do desire to go on and maybe you get some of those answers. How about why you should read it, guys? Look, as with any book that I review on this channel, I always encourage you to read it yourself and make up your own mind. My word is not gospel, not at all, and I never want to deter anyone from reading something. This channel is always going to be, this is my opinion. What do you think? Let's talk about it in the comments. That's always what this channel has been about. So I have so many people that still watch that, unpopular opinion video that I made and say, oh, thank you. You saved me, so many hours for not reading this. That has never been my goal. I never want to deter people from reading this. Again, if you go by the statistics, so many more people love this book than don't. So I think that you should definitely give it a try and check it out for yourself. I know my opinion is unpopular on this one. People that I love and respect their opinions on this book, have it as a top 10 book all time for them. So I think it's a me problem. I get that. But I think if you're making like the transition from like a Harry Potter to this, yeah, great place to start. I think that a lot of people, this was their first adult fantasy book, and that's always going to be special to them, and I'm never going to take that away. Like I said, I don't want my opinion to make you feel like yours is invalidated. If you think this is the best fantasy story of the 2000s, awesome. I think that's great. I'm glad. I want people to enjoy things, like I said, but if you admire world building and prose over character and storyline, then I think this might be the book for you. Sure. I mean, if you need things to happen, don't know if you're going to be quite that pleased, but I do think that, again, if you just love you some good writing and you like an incredibly written world, it's going to be hard to find one better than this. So, final thoughts, guys. I've always admitted that I went into this book with sky-high expectations, and that might have been unfair to it. It might have done it a bit of a disservice. And I feel like I can check expectations, and I can be fair, and I can kind of just grade something off its own merit without what anybody has told me. But my expectations were so high for this book, just based off of how many people were saying it was the most important book since Tolkien and things like that. It really set my expectations high. So I can't say that I didn't have some kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say I went into it like my arms crossed and I was expecting a hit. No, definitely not. I was excited, saying, great. If this book is that great, I want to join the party. I want to enjoy it just as much. And I just did not. But I've been asked a lot of the times, will I ever revisit this book? I think I would. So what I have said is that if he does ever complete this series, book 3 has a release date. Yes, I will reread it, and then I will read Wise Man's Fear, and then I will read book 3. I will try it again, and maybe my opinion will have changed. I've read a lot of fantasy between now and then. Maybe my mood has changed on these things. It can happen. So I don't want anybody to not visit this book, like I said, because I'm not really crazy about it. But I felt like I wanted to do this review just to kind of put to bed some of the things about, oh, well, Mike just absolutely hated that book. No, I just don't understand why it has the legacy it has as, the best book of the 2000s. I just don't see it. But again, that's just me. So if you guys love this book, I want you to drop in the comments and tell me why. But for me, as of today, this book will always be The Name of the Mid. So, guys, did you read Name of the Wind? What did you think? I'm sure you loved it. Drop in the comments, guys, and let me know. Let's not try to start a war down there. But you know what? I want people to be honest and be able to talk about what they think of this book. If you can never watch my channel again, hey, that's cool. You got to go with God. Do what you think is right. But, I think that there's always going to be room for differences of opinion on this book. And as you can see, I can talk about a book I wasn't crazy about, and I can put a lot of positive on it. And I think there was a lot of positive in this book. So drop in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you there.